Hey folks, it's Johnny Flynn, and I'd like to show you what our DNC chair is up to, who was Camacho in Norwalk, because he was Firetree's attorney in Albany. When he moved from Albany to Connecticut, he put a prison on his street without notifying the public, got paid all along the way, put the police chief on the board, and the police chief is covering up check fraud as instructed by the mayor. So the mayor used to be police chief. Mayor Harry Rilling used to be police chief of Norwalk. But he's been instructing the Detective Bureau not to investigate check fraud. So this is a complicated thing I'm discussing, but keep in mind, I'm going to put some documents on the screen that might actually clear up some of this mess, because your Senate Majority Leader keeps stating that crime is down when in fact 2/3 of the police precincts have been reporting the crime. Even the MTA doesn't report to the FBI on local crime. So a lot of the jurisdictions report about 15,700 out of 18,500 in total. So imagine the MTA not reporting. Most sanctuary cities don't report their crime to the FBI because they're supposed to refer federal cases to federal law enforcement, and, for example, our governor told them not to. So I want to show you what Bob Duff is doing, lying, saying that there is no crime is down, when in fact crime was up through the Obama administration. For the first 3 years of the Trump administration, crime came down. I can show you the facts. I have all the timetables. So what does Bob Duff do? He pulls a graph from 2018 showing the Trump improvements, claiming they're his improvements and how well he's doing, while he's closing prisons in Connecticut. 3 prisons. He closed a maximum security prison. They laid a serial rapist out who went back and tried to murder the lady who he raped years ago. Why? Because the state's attorney cut a deal with the person to get them out of jail, made them agree to lesser charges, which had shorter prison sentences, and he let them out. And there's a restitution part of it, which will never be paid because the guy is a serial criminal, never pays his taxes. Why would he care what the governor of Connecticut says? So keep in mind, I want to show you these documents. Here we go. I'll take myself off the screen and go to the document. Here we go. Flynn versus Firetree. Our Senate Majority Leader put a prison on Quintard. The prison used to be a halfway house until one of the tenants hung himself on the balcony, and they showed that body. They left the body hanging in front of the in front of the bus stop on Quintard for 2 days when that occurred. That was a couple of years ago. So here we go. Defendant Firetree, first set of requests for admission. Okay, now I asked for admission 2 years ago, no response. I asked for interrogatories to be answered, no response. I asked for depositions to be taken, no response. I asked for a jury trial, denied. I asked certain things for defendant Norwalk to do, they got dismissed. They got a dismissal. Now, Firetree is a money laundering slime bucket from Pennsylvania who's been caught 50 times laundering money through Orange Co. and all their subsidiaries. They've got a terrible attorney named Robinson and Cole who gives our Senate Majority Leader campaign contributions, and so do they give our corrupt mayor, Harry Rilling. They put Kaholic on the board. They put a Firetree. They put multiple other people, Democrats mostly, on the board of Firetree, including the girlfriend of the attorney Camacho in Norwalk, who is now DNC chair. So, the old DNC chair of Norwalk brought a prison to Connecticut, put it in a residential neighborhood with no permits, with the help of Rochefort in the zoning board, in the zoning office of Norwalk. She falsified statements in her affidavit, as well as Harry Rilling falsified statements in his affidavit. If you look, here's their admissions. Admit that Firetree never operated a halfway house. They certainly did. Admit that Firetree does not currently operate a halfway. It certainly does. What's the definition of a halfway house? Bob Duff set up the definition of a halfway house. So, let's go back to the questioning. These are admissions for me after 2 years they've had my admissions and refused to answer. Admit that the city of Norwalk denied Firetree a tenant occupancy permit. Forcing me, a resident who found 3 crack pipes on my street, and watching what's happening with all the overdoses at this halfway house, is criminal. They started operating in January of 2019. They had a permit in May 2018, which they denied receiving, okay? I have the permit. They lied to the judge 6 times. Norwalk lied to the judge 6 times. So what's happening here is this Robinson and Cole attorney is bribing our Senate Majority Leader to put prisons in local communities. It's not the only one. 17 Quintard Avenue, look on the screen, is not the only local prison in Norwalk. There is also one on Bartlett Avenue, of which those residents were never told either that that was coming. So now their intention, according to their written literature, is to immerse these criminals in our local communities. So they're walking the streets, okay, at night. And there was a recent murder next to one house next door. The next door neighbor of Firetree was found murdered in his car, okay? And he complained that he had drugs planted in his house. So here we go. Admit you never made property tax payments to Firetree. No, I make property tax payments to Kaholic's organization, the city of Norwalk. What you need to realize right now is that Kaholic is sitting on cash stolen checks of my house, 28 of them. I had a problem with the same thing happening in East Haven, and the East Haven police put an informant in the house who tried to kill me with an axe. They ran the water continuously and ran up $1,000 water bills, cut the copper pipes out of the house. That was my brokerage firm's office, which Jim Himes is supposedly investigating 500,000 felonies at. So when you look at what's happening here, admit you never communicated to Firetree any business relationship that you alleged. Admit that you've never been present on the premise at 17, whose premises have been owned by... Oh, I've been on the premises many times. Admit you've never been present in the interior since those have been owned. Why would I admit anything to this Kevin Daly, who's been... Robinson and Cole is a criminal enterprise lobbyist in Connecticut, And, of course, they want these things answered. The document's dated October 1. But what's going on here? Bob Duff is bragging that crime is down when it is not. Homicides are up 30%. Bob Duff is using a graph from 2018 to describe how crime is down, when in fact that was a result of Trump enforcing border policy, stopping coyotes coming from Connecticut with fentanyl. And we've got a problem that he's a huge liar. He just lied about the birds dying from 5G. He says it's birdseed killing the birds. Really? And he said recently that, Bud, don't say anything. I'm going over the Firetree documents that they served on me on October 1st, saying basically admissions. They want me to admit certain things. Meanwhile, they've had interrogatories for 2 years. They haven't answered. I asked them to be deposed. They refused to show up. And I'm going it all down, all those things on a recent post. I'm at 11 minutes. So give me a few minutes. I'll call you right back, okay? That's a resident of Quintard Avenue who lives near Firetree. And they served him in the lawsuit as well, in a different lawsuit, as a matter of fact. But what's the problem here? The problem is the DNC, the lobbyists, bribing officials to do their policy. Now, Duff is maintaining that he's closing prisons when in fact he's opening them in residential communities with staff that are mental health experts that are not equipped to handle violent felons. I'm going to talk to you about a violent felon who people are sending me information on. Let me go to my phone. I will read you his name. How about that? I have received many photographs of documents, and I will tell you this gentleman's name. Gusto Clemente was in the maximum security prison in Connecticut. Colangelo, who's been taking bribes as expressed in the Stephen Barrier murder, who falsified evidence and destroyed evidence of tasering. This is a legal document, folks, on the screen. These are the arrest records of Gustavo Clemente, serial rapist, released from a Connecticut prison to kill the woman who gave me this email. Her name is Catherine. I won't tell you her last name. She lives in Stamford. She used to be a Norwalk resident. She was in the housing authority. She had rats in her apartment. She has a compelling story. She is mentally handicapped, okay? She also has physical handicaps. So this is the reason why there is Section 8 in Connecticut. Unfortunately, her story is so remarkable that I need to share it. So I'm at 14 minutes. What I'm explaining is serial rapists are being released to murder people like Kathleen, sending me the documents right now, filling out an affidavit. Hopefully I can help her. The problem is the places that Bob Duff has called a halfway house don't fit the legal definition of what the Federal Bureau of Prisons uses. Their attorney, Camacho, in Norwalk, okay, who's in his 60s, I believe, had a 23-year-old girlfriend who he put on the board of Firetree, Eloisa Melendez. That's the same woman who cashed the DSCC bribery check on the Common Council of Norwalk in her role working for Lamont in the Democratic committee, took a bribe right in front of a vote for POCO, which is a disastrous... Oh, and Bob Duff's related to that too. Bob Duff gave money for the elevator facility in the POCO building, which has been sitting there idle in South Norwalk for years. And that money is now in question as to why $5 million of state funds went to the elevator equipment of the POCO deal, while the Democrats are collecting bribes from the McClutchies of the world. So McClutchy gave money to Stamford to build the train station. He's connected to Tong, who's our Attorney General. Our Attorney General writes the letter, the $30 million request to Richard Colangelo, from Richard Colangelo, to issue a check from Lamont to pay bribes to cover up murders, so that the murderers in Stamford, 6 of them, Kilcoyne, Collins, I have the other 4, just not totally sure of the other 4. On video, 6 cops kill a kid. There was a bribe paid to cover up the evidence of tasering that Sean Barger has in his evidence locker, though Richard Colangelo has never told Sean Barger, a detective in Stamford, to divulge the video. More importantly, there was a crime committed in 2020. 500,000 felonies occurred. A brokerage firm was robbed. Richard Colangelo's been investigating it for 21 years. $250,000 checks were stolen and cashed by Kelly Dry and Warren, Judge Adams's attorney firm. And 10 attorneys working for Judge Adams in the Stamford Superior Court, which are commissioners of the court, cashed stolen checks. So this all goes back to Colangelo and the connection between what's happening with Bob Duff, Senate Majority Leader, and his lies about crime going down. Let me give you an important fact. The last jury trial in Stamford occurred in March of 2020. No jury trials are occurring. That's judicial misconduct. Prosecutorial misconduct occurs when a bribe is collected by the state's attorney paid by the governor by executive order. That's legislative misconduct. That's prosecutorial misconduct. And what's happening is that you're being lied to by the media, just like Trump has been explaining, except that Bob Duff is telling the media crime is down, when in fact the court is closed. The Norwalk Criminal Court has been closed for 2 years. It's closed, folks. So tell me how the criminals are being prosecuted. They're not. Look at the framing of T.J. Elgin in Westport, Connecticut, running for Congress against Himes by an anonymous phone call, false arrest, represented by Dennis Bradley, who's a Himes staffer. T.J. Elgin didn't know that Dennis Bradley was working for Himes, so he retained him as his own attorney. So Himes' attorney, during a congressional race, represented both Himes and T.J. Elgin. The fact that T.J. Elgin couldn't plead not guilty by the judge, I was in the room, he said, "Where's Dennis? He's on a first name with Dennis Bradley." Now Dennis Bradley's indicted for campaign finance fraud. I say to you, if a staffer for Himes who's Himes' attorney is indicted for campaign finance fraud, you got to wonder if Himes committed campaign finance fraud. Well, Democrat Brian Merlin is maintaining that Democrat Jim Himes falsified his own delegates in his congressional race, and is maintaining that Attorney General Tong also falsified his delegates. So, if we don't have voter fraud in Connecticut, I don't know what we have. Denise Merrill knows that presidential candidates in Connecticut that ran, 13 presidential candidates ran in 2020 for President of the United States. 13 Connecticut residents. One had 21% of the vote. However, Denise Merrill says that candidate got no votes. 21% of the vote translated into 0 votes in a poll. So here we go. That was in March 2020, which was obviously 7 months before the November 7th vote. So let's get back to how corrupt the state is, because the Senate Majority Leader is the biggest liar in the state, next to Jim Himes. These people are taking bribes, and Robinson Cole, the drafter of this document, by the way, there's lots of documents I can show you. Wait and see. Here, watch. Watch. Robinson. Let's bring them up. Mail server, Firetree. Notice. Defendant Firetree notice of service and first set of requests for emissions to the plaintiff, me. Okay? Keep in mind this, folks. One foreclosure occurred in Connecticut during the pandemic. They took my house because I paid my mortgage, but I didn't get credit for it. Because in Connecticut, mortgage companies cash checks fail to keep a mortgage history on a mortgage, then sell the mortgage. So when you look at what happened, BSI Financial is a subsidiary of another mortgage company that falsified the payment history on mortgages in Norwalk. Okay? Chief Kaholic has the 28 cash stolen checks for that incident. Meanwhile, I'm at 1,239 cash stolen checks. $250,000 checks, it's money laundering, it's deep state criminal activity in Norwalk, Connecticut. Now, Deputy Chief Zecca has to go to jail. Harry Rilling has to go to jail. Kaholic certainly has to go to jail. We're going to interview a victim of a murder's sister, who's maintaining that witnesses were never contacted in a kidnapping in broad daylight. There was a kidnapping in Norwalk in broad daylight. The cops never investigated the witnesses. The body was never found. The woman was never seen again. The Norwalk police went after the kidnapper for kidnapping, and he went to jail. However, they never went after him for the body or the murder. That kidnapper was released and has subsequently died. Therefore, this family, who had a young girl in her 20s murdered 35 years ago, is being lied to that there is a current investigation going on. Okay? They can't release any information because of a current investigation. Now, here we go. I had 9 detectives in Norwalk looking to check fraud since I moved here. 9. They can't release any information because there's an ongoing investigation. However, the judge's law firm cashed the stolen checks, which I told them all. Now we go. Here we go. We have a judge appointed by Lamont cashing stolen checks at his law firm. Not a few checks. Quite a few checks, okay? Over 1,000 checks cashed in total. But hundreds of thousands of dollars cashed by Kelly, Dry, and Warren. I am saying, folks, that Jim Himes is complicit in a cover-up started by Bernie Madoff, which continues to this day, where cashed stolen mortgage checks are not credited to homeowners on Quintard Avenue, next to Firetree. The guy next door was recently murdered and found murdered in his car. And he maintained he had drugs planted on him. He did sell pot, he admitted, but not the long list of much more serious drugs. So I ask you, if people are ODing at Firetree, doesn't that violate their probation? It certainly should. I want the criminal record of every Firetree prison release convict that Bob Duff has put there. So I'm going to send this to Bob Duff, Jim Himes, the governor, Kaholic, everybody involved. When I name a name and I make a video, I send it to them. No response. No response. I will tell you this. The motive of the check fraud case goes back to Detective Maloney, Bill Maloney of Norwalk. He falsely maintained that the person who owned the checkbook that Bank America honored the cash stolen checks for was a domestic terrorist. So Norwalk was able to cash stolen checks for 20 years by falsely maintaining falsified evidence, threats, and they use criminal informants for murder for hire through East Haven, through Chief Larrabee, who worked for Malloy. Larrabee was police chief under Malloy. When Malloy became governor, he made Povodator a judge. Judge Povodator worked with Chief Larrabee for 10 years as counsel to the city of Stamford. So here we go. Malloy made criminals judges. Yes. That falsified evidence stopped investigation of financial fraud in Stamford, Wilton, New Canaan, Pound Ridge, New York. That makes it federal. Minnesota, Milwaukee, Philadelphia. Fiserv is in Philadelphia. Canada. Okay? Computer Shares is in Canada. Computer Shares, the parent, is in Australia. This is an international check fraud problem covered up by Norwalk, Connecticut for 21 years. So what I'm saying is these are court documents. There's many. I can show you many. There's many John Flynn lawsuits. I did sue the state's attorney 6 times. 5 times for money laundering, 1 time for bribery and extortion in a murder case. So when you look at the Doulos case and you figure out who Judge Heller is, Judge Heller's special master is John Carberry, Bernie Madoff's attorney. Need I say more? Bernie Madoff used Connecticut hedge funds to make financial crime payments to congressmen, okay, all over the place. Look at Maxine Waters. Oh yes, up to here, financial services on the U.S. Congress. Jim Himes, financial services. Goldman Sachs. Look at the Tweed Airport deal. American Airlines just pulled out of Tweed Airport. Why? Because the deal is corrupt. Because Congressman Himes shouldn't be paying Goldman Sachs anything. David Lehman works from Goldman Sachs, is chief of staff of Lamont. Jim Himes came from Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs was never prosecuted for the financial crimes of 2008 and 2009. Rigging the Treasury market, rigging the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac mortgage industry problem, blaming Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers and AIG is a totally different ball of wax. I wish you guys understood how Connecticut is bribing congressmen for what they want. Now, look at the salt deal in New London. It reeks, folks. The salt deal in New London, that was our container ship port. They took the railroad tracks out for the windmill deal of Lamont, which will help no one. We have problems in Connecticut. Hearst won't write a story about anything. I send them every YouTube picture. I send them every BitChute post that I do. They are complicit in covering up every problem in Connecticut. They are on the Democrats' payroll. Harry Rilling has an outbox in his office on the wall, right when you walk up to his office, of what they intend to print next. You know what? It doesn't say that Harry Rilling is asking its Detective Bureau of Norwalk to cover up financial crimes. Oh no, but that's exactly what happened, and I gave a disc of the evidence to the Hour. And guess what? They won't print my name, folks. So, that's fine with me, but you need to share, post, and when I talk about Firetree, prison release is coming to your neighborhood. Those people, we don't have a list of the crimes they committed. That's what I'm going to do with my response to this interrogatory. It's actually called an admission. If I don't answer this document in 30 days, technically it becomes fact. But the admission of Firetree that I filed was never answered. So I have good standing in maintaining that they committed fraud, because how do you build a prison without a permit? How do you spend 3 times the amount of money? And why did they send $1.2 million to the city of Norwalk? Why did Norwalk get hit with $1.2 million fine from Firetree? $1.2 million fine from Cedar Court. And why did Greenblatt at Cedar Court pay a campaign contribution to the mayor after the mayor had to pay him $1.2 million? Why is Robinson and Cole funding the campaign of Bob Duff while they put a prison in Connecticut with no permit? Think about it. Think about it. Why is the police chief on the board of Firetree? Think about it. Why is the DNC chair, Camacho, on the board of this, the attorney for Firetree in Albany? Why is Eloisa Melendez, DNC chair, on the board of Firetree? Let me ask you why. Because she's taking the payments from McClutchy on all the development deals, who are funding Harry Rilling's campaign account. This is a criminal enterprise doing criminal acts and covering up criminal acts by dictating to the police department not to follow up on these financial crimes while the court is closed. Unbelievable. So nothing's moving forward in the court except what the court wants to move forward. And in this case, Judge Kremrich, Judge Gennario, Judge Jacobs, go on and on and on, Judge McDonald. There's a lot of problems in Connecticut. Have a great day. The only way we can overturn what's happening is by getting honest people in there who will talk about the facts and can prove the facts and actually know what's going on in the court, know what's going on in the police department. You can say, hey, I want to defund police, or you want to fund police. No one should defund the police. But Hume in internal affairs should be fired immediately. There's no question about it. There's a case where they doctored the body cam evidence to prove that someone was resisting arrest, when in fact, all throughout the unmodified body cam evidence, 4 cops are saying, he's not resisting. Then they broke a person's neck in the video by sweeping his knee. They broke his neck, they broke his knee, after the Garner incident. Norwalk's maintaining since then that they've never used a chokehold since the Garner incident. They certainly choked Alfredo Esposito. I have the video. I can show you the video. I can show you the x-rays of the neck. I can show you the x-rays of the knee. And what you don't know about Alfred, you're soon going to learn. And it's excellent. It's monstrously good. Have a great day. I'm at 35 minutes. No one's going to understand what I'm saying, nor care. But when your son gets tased to death, don't come to me crying later. When your daughter gets raped by a serial rapist, don't come crying to me later. Have a great day. Flynn, 2020-22. I need $10 from every Connecticut resident. It's not a lot of money. I can save you $7,000 each. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. It will take me a long time to do it, but I will do it. Have a great day.